Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another AFL Fantasy Fanatics show on the channel. So we're going to be doing this on every Wednesday night during the season, where we're going to be talking some GameDay Squad and our AFL teams on the GameDay Squad platform. I'm your host, Bales, and you can find me at BAILSDT across the socials. And joining me throughout the season will be Tom from GDS, a good friend of the show. Tom, mate, how are you? Excited for footy, mate? We're just over 24 hours from the first game getting underway, mate. How are you and looking forward to it?
Yeah, look, I'm definitely looking forward to it. Don't get me wrong, but my past couple of games have been very traumatic as a Swans fan. The grand final, seeing Errol break his ankle, and then us getting touched up on the at the SCG last Friday. So not exactly the start to the year that I wanted, but the best thing about fantasy is that you don't have to worry about all of that. I can build my own dream squad and hopefully lead them to victory. So I've been waiting for this moment for a very long time, and round one is finally here.
Exactly. So we're going to be chatting about GameDay Squad. So if anyone is new to the platform or hasn't signed up yet, you can still do that. We haven't started, obviously, yet. We've still got just over a day to go. So if you go to sign up, use my code BAILSDT and you get yourself 3 of the 9-player common packs, which are worth $7 each. So that's $21 for free that you guys get up just for signing up. And you don't have to pay any money, because the teams that we're going to be, me and Tom will show you that our teams and play about are just starter. So you can get them just from your free weekly packs on a Monday, all bronze cards and there. So, but if you choose to spend cash on it, you can also do that as well, but you don't have to. It is a free platform to play. And yeah, we'll be going through a couple of tips first, Tom, before we get into the game by game stuff and sort of previewing each game. So, Tom, a lot of people normally, like myself, when they're selecting their team, normally go sort by average score, and they'll put sort of some of the top players in. They might look for some matches, right? But everyone's is 0. So it's actually a bit trickier to look for players to play in your team. So what are some tips for coaches to sort of get to make it quicker for them, or anything like that? What would be some tips when setting up your lineups?
Great question, and very valid, because I think that's the most important thing, is trying to work out who you're going to start. My best answer for that will be the stats center. So we've built an entire stats center where you can go back and not only look at the stats as they update for this season we're in now, but it actually shows you the history of stats with players on our platform. So you can go to 2024, for example, in our stats center. You can actually filter by players, and they're actually in their 2025 position. So you can go see the best 10, the best 20 per position updated to this season on our stats center. So that is 100% the best place where you can look at total score, average score, and the individual scoring stats that players accumulate throughout a game. So that'll be the biggest tip I can give you. Go give that a browse, have a play around with all the filters, and you can really sort of narrow down what you're looking for and then start picking some players based on that.
Yeah, exactly. So obviously coaches that have signed up obviously get all their bronze packs, and they get to sort of set their lineup. Would you say that it's better used if you don't have a few of the rarities? Obviously, if you use my code BAILSDT sign up, you'll get some silvers, some golds, maybe some platinums and diamonds in there, and you may be lucky enough to snag yourself a legend. Is it better used if you just have bronze cards to be using them in starter? Or do you think because the prizes are a little bit better in classic, should coaches be using those bronze cards in classic instead?
Well, it depends on your situation and what you want to target. So I don't think there's a blanket answer for it, but my personal suggestion would be to start off in the starter competition. And if you can, fill out a classic competition as well. Because essentially, just for competing in both, you get a starter bundle player pack each week just for putting a squad in. And what that is you get 1 player of every position. And if you do that for both starter and for classic, that's 8 players in addition that you're going to get weekly to the ones that we give you on Mondays and different promotions and different things that we're doing. So just making sure you have 2 squads is probably the most important thing. But for me, I would pick either one or the other. So get all your good cards into one and really target that competition for the weekly and seasonal prizes, or the other. And if you're not sure, I think starter's the best answer for that.
Yeah. No, I fully agree. I think, starter's the one that you're looking at. But obviously, if you can make 2 squads together, you're getting double the players in terms of the starter packs, and then you can start filling out. Then you can maybe start putting them on the transfer market, getting better players, maybe better rarities.
Exactly.
There are some players that are quite rare on the transfer market for bronzes. So if you can maybe snag a couple of those, trade them for some platinum, some golds, you're laughing. So you might even get a duplicate bronze Cherry, for example. You might be able to get sell him up for maybe a gold Sam Walsh or a gold Adam Cher or a gold Noah Anderson or something like that, because someone might be looking for a ruck over a midfielder. So, yeah, no, I like it. Any other sort of tips or anything when people are setting lineups before we get stuck into the games and sort of a few players we like and don't like?
Yeah, make sure to check lineups. That's definitely the biggest thing. That goes, for anything. But I got stung by this last week. I had a really good round and had a null score. So I don't want to talk about it. I'm going to move on. I'm going to blame Cyclone Alfred. So it's good to be back online because I was out for a couple of days and, my brain was in many other places other than in fantasy land. But I'm fully back now, which is good. Make sure you're checking, see who's playing, because the last thing you want is a null score from anyone. And we have a rolling lockout, which means up until 1 minute before the game starts, you can sub in or out a player. Unless they've already played, then they're locked. So make sure you're using that to your full advantage. Make sure you get a full 22 in weekly. And I know another thing people always ask is, does my bench count? Yes, it does in GameDay Squad. So put great players in the bench because it doesn't work like an emergency. Every starting player actually scores points for you weekly.
Yep, exactly. And I don't know if people heard, but I did say Dan Houston. So that was the player that Tom accidentally left in the side and forgot to change because of Cyclone Alfred. So we'll blame it on that. So probably my tip would...
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. My tip would be don't leave your changes until like 2-3 minutes before, because we do know technology. And obviously GameDay Squad is a great platform, but technology can always sometimes go really slow. Maybe your Wi-Fi is going slow. Maybe the GameDay Squad might have just an unexpected sort of delay, and then you all of a sudden have players locked in that you didn't want. So I'd say give it at least an hour before the game. Make sure your squad's all set, ready to go. And if you're playing obviously across multiple comps, make sure it's all set, because I got caught out by that, trying to change a player or two maybe a few minutes beforehand, and then get caught out where it gets locked out and you can't do anything about it. So make sure you guys have your lineups and squad set, ready to go. Cool. Well, each week we'll go through each of the games and we'll sort of go through one player each, whether we like them or don't like them. So maybe we might have a game where both of us talk about a player we like, or we might talk about a player that we don't like. So we'll go through that. So we'll start off with Richmond and Carlton, and we do have the teams for that as well. So teams did drop not long ago. So no sort of unexpected sort of ins or outs. So Sam Walsh is back from injury. He's probably the big one against Richmond. A few people in GameDay Squad may be putting him in the lineup just with the good matchup this week, along with maybe an Adam Chera. People may be looking at Sam Doherty's named on the bench, could be the sub. Obviously, we know that the sub does come from players that are on the bench. Jaiden Short, I'm sure, another player that a few people may be targeting in GameDay Squad as well. And also maybe Tim Taranto, maybe even one of the rucks. Maybe go Toby Nankervis or Tom De Koning. They could also be some of the players you might be targeting. So, Tom, we'll go to you first. Who's a player from this game that you're either considering heavily or fading?
Yeah, well, I think I'll start with the obvious one is Sam Walsh. And, amazing player, can get his hand on the footy. Have him lined up at halfback, which I don't exactly think will be the case, but definitely will be something to watch. Sorry.
Half forward. He's lined up half forward.
Sorry. Yeah, I'm a little hesitant, I'll be honest with you. Currently, I have him in my best 22, and you'll see a little later. But he's probably one of the players that I'm thinking about fading, just because I'm not fully sold on the fact that I want him in my squad for round one. I feel like I want to watch Walsh a little bit first. I have some concerns. I guess the only reason I have him in at the moment is it's a great matchup against Richmond. In theory, if Walsh plays in the middle, he should dominate in the middle, get plenty of touches, boot to ball, and that's just going to equal a lot of points. So I look at it as being a free-flowing game. And a player like Walsh should dominate this one, because I believe the Blues will get on top and they're going to use their best ball users in someone like Walsh to get through the middle and to connect to their forwards. So one to watch, obviously, absolute jet, stud player. Little hesitant, but I think I'm going to back him in just because of a great matchup.
Yeah, I think I agree. Yeah, it's. I think it's the fact that you got guys like Goulden, Bont, Butters, guys like that are all injured and out that we would normally have pretty much locked into our squads every single week. But with them injured, we've got to look for a few other options, which I guess makes the first round, this round for GDS, quite interesting because I think a few people go for a few different options. I'm actually looking at like an Adam Chera maybe over a Sam Walsh instead, trying to target that matchup and maybe a bit of a pod as well, because I think a lot more people go for a guy like Sam Walsh or maybe other options I don't have in my squad, whereas a guy like Adam Chera could be a guy that could benefit from that round one matchup. The guy I'm actually keeping, I think will be very, very good in this game with Jaiden Shaw in defence. So across all other AFL fantasy formats, obviously defence has been an issue, and it's no different in Game Day Squad. I think that it's not like we have a plethora of 10, 12, 15 options to be putting in there. So I think Jaiden Shaw, we know, is going to be the number one distributor off halfback for Richmond. Going to take kick-ins. You'd expect that. And Richmond have talked about chipping the ball around the back. I think this could happen on tomorrow night, and I think you can get a lot of plus sevens in Game Day Squad because obviously it's 4 points for a kick. So plus 7, a few of those will definitely be very, very handy as well. So he's a player that I'm keeping a close eye on Thursday night. We'll move to Friday night, which is Hawthorn Essendon. Obviously, we get all the teams for the rest of the games tomorrow night. But Tom, who's one player that you're keen on or not so keen on in this game?
Yeah, for sure. I'm going to stay in the midfield. I'm going to go Will Day. Now, pending, he's all good, ready to go. I know he had a bit of a stinger on last Friday against the Swans, but he looked unbelievable. And I feel like the player and the way he played is sort of what we expected from Jai Newcomb over the past years. We sort of thought he was going to grab that role, be that dominant mid, and then, become essentially a fantasy stud. And that's not saying, or not to say that he still can't become that, because he's a very good player, still has age on his side, and he could develop into one of the best. But Will Day just looked silky smooth. He looked unbelievable. 3 goals. And in Game Day Squad, where you get the extra point for a kick, he had 17 kicks as well. So it just led to a dominant performance from him. He scored 158 fantasy points last round. That's already such a fantastic start. The role he was playing, I loved. So for me, big ticks there. Will Day, I know people were, I guess he wasn't started as much last year or season, but I'm think I'm going to take a bit of a punt on it. I'm going to ride some form here and believe in my gut and what I saw last Friday night. I think I'm going to get him in my squad. You mentioned some of the injuries to midfielders. It's pretty tough. No Treloar as well. A lot of our top guns from last season aren't available for round one. So do you go Will Day? I think yes. Believe my gut. Believe what my eyes saw. And Hawthorn are a great team, and I do think they win this one again. They start the season 2-0.
You mentioned obviously how good he was last week. I guess my worry is that I think he'll be quite popular in Game Day Squad because a lot of people will just see him at the top of the list in midfields because he's obviously not a lot of players have already played. He'll be at top of the list with his average of 158. I'm just nervous that maybe a Sam Durham or someone goes to him potentially this week and tags him. So in Game Day Squad, I'm probably not looking at playing him this week. I'm just a bit worried about the matchup. But are you worried about the matchup, Tom? Obviously, Essendon could put some attention to him. Is that any worry for you?
Yeah, I do think it's a worry, but I can't see him getting tagged. But that just might be me starting Will Day, believing that there's no that way that will happen. It is a concern for sure because, Essendon have been known to do that and send attention to the best player. And if he gets on a bit of a roll maybe early, then do you see that tag come in and him just get nullified for the rest of the game? So, yes, it's in the back of my mind, 100%.
Yeah, exactly. We've got a couple of questions here as well. So if you guys are watching live, we can answer you any Game Day Squad question you guys have throughout the show as well. So send them through. Happy to answer any of them as we go through. So Vivek Budia, I apologise, Vivek, if I've got that. I've butchered that, mate. But he says, dilemma over Nasai versus Sheasel. Nasai affords me Will Day in the squad. So what are your thoughts on Nasai versus Sheasel?
I'm going Sheasel, but if it's to play, it depends who the other midfielder is, in my opinion, because you're sort of weighing up 2 scores here, a 2-on-2 sort of trade. It feels like, right? So it would depend on what the third player or fourth player, is in this. But I think Sheasel is going to have a really good week, a good round. and against a depleted Doggies midfield, it's probably a good round to get Sheasel in because we could see him just go nuclear.
Yeah. I think Sheasel's got I think Sheasel is one of those players in Game Day Squad you got to lock into your squad every week. I think you just don't.
And maybe with the tag risk, it's not worth.
Yeah, it's not worth it.
Completely changing the squad, and maybe you just sort of. Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. But yeah, Vivek, if that was obviously an AFL fantasy sort of question you're talking about forwarding, obviously we'll answer those in other shows. Obviously, just today they will be focusing on Game Day Squad. But appreciate the question anyway. And we've got through a few questions here, which we'll answer as we keep going through the games. Player from this game I want to talk about. Interesting. I'm fading a James Sicily in this one. So a few people still might be keen in putting him on Game Day Squad because obviously you can just do it. It's week to week. You can change your whole squad each round. I'm just worried that Essendon have been known to put someone on him when they've played. So it's been a Matt Guelphy in the past. I wouldn't be shocked if they put someone like a Ben Hobbs, just for example, like a Ben Hobbs or another small forward just playing a defensive role, keeping him accountable. That for me worries me. And also the fact that he could be thrown forward at any point. I'd be more confident Game Day Squad putting him into my team once guys like Mitch Lewis and Cal Shadira back, because then that role's a bit more certain. And then you can target the matchups, right? And look at that. Sure. So for me, I'm fading a James Sicily this week from that game. Moving to the Geelong and Freo game. So apparently it's going to be quite hot in this one. So going to be interesting to see how that all goes. Apparently there might be longer breaks in between quarters, which is definitely understandable. But Tom, who's a player that you're keen on or fading from this game?
Well, I will just make a comment. Maybe you'll talk about him, but Caleb Sarong is a must start for me. I feel like he starts every season on fire. This guy always kicks off his campaigns just dominating. And I just see the first couple of weeks for him being nuclear. And then he sort of comes back to the medium and comes back down to earth for a little bit. And then later in the year, we sort of see Brayshaw. It's just a bit of a trend maybe I picked up on. But I think Caleb's good to go for round one. But not going to talk about Caleb. I'm going to go to a man that I truly love. He was an all-star player last year. It's Luke Ryan.
Yep.
Kick mark combination. He loves it. He is just the best at it. Him and Clark in particular are I think they gave the ball to each other more than any other combination of player in the entire competition last year. They know who they're looking for. He's going to take the kick-ins again. He gets a lot of easy points, and he has a really good floor because of it. So Luke Ryan is someone that I'm getting in my defense. You're talking about the defense being a bit hard to pick, Bales. I think that's one for me where that's an easy inclusion because maybe he doesn't have the ceiling of some other players, but I think as a fantasy floor, knowing his role, knowing what he's going to do on the weekend, especially against a team like Geelong, who are going to put up points and hopefully maybe kick a lot of behinds, that'll just mean even more points for Ryan as well. So he's an in for me.
Yeah, he's in for me as well. Him and also the guy I'm going to talk about being a Tom Stewart. So I've been keen on him on other platforms, but I think Game Day Squad this week against Freo, we saw what a Stephen May did in the previous week in the Community Series games. That's something to maybe Freo might give up points for defenders if they're going to be playing a bit quicker through the midfield. But if this game's going to be hot, you'd think that the players are going to take some time when they just take a couple minutes out of the game, just chip around. That could be +7 heaven for a guy like a Tom Stewart or even a Luke Ryan, as you mentioned. So I've got both of them in my squad at the moment, and they're two guys I'm pretty keen on, particularly with if they're going to be chipping the ball around as well. So, they're guys I'm keen on. Got a couple of questions here as well. Obviously, people asking for break-evens. As I said, this is just purely on Game Day Squad. So, obviously, no break-evens here. We'll be answering all those questions on Friday for AFL Fantasy. But we do have one here from Gabriel saying, how do you trade players for better players in Game Day Squad? So, we did have a real deep dive on that in one of the other videos on the channel. So we did a video with Tom explaining how you can use the transfer market and stuff like that. But just quickly here, Tom, do you want to give a bit of a summary for Gabriel as to how you can trade better for better players in Game Day Squad?
Yeah, for sure. So you got to go to My Players. You got to find a player that you're willing to trade. Click on them, and there should be a Request Players button. Now, when you click that, there are a couple things you'll have to input. You'll have to click the rarity of card that you're asking for in return. Now, you can do the same player over different rarities, but of course, you can't ask for the same player twice. We only have a 1 limit. So if you want, Nick Martin in bronze, you can only ask for that once in per trade. You can do it again with another card in another trade. But yeah, essentially, you got to pick the rarity of card, put the name in you want, and you can put up to 4 different players in there. And then if a coach sends back a trade offer, but it only has 2 of the 4 players, you'll actually have to go in there and accept it. So you'll need to decide whether the 2 players are the ones you want, and then you can accept the trade from there. Or if they offer every card that you're asking for, then the trade will be auto-completed. So either one or the other. You have to go complete the trade on your end, or it'll be auto-completed because everything you've asked for was included as a part of the offer.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah, definitely very good tips there from Tom. We will move into the next game and then answer a couple more questions as well. So Sydney and Brisbane. So your Swans up against the Lions in a grand final rematch, but at the SCG this time, hoping, I'm assuming that you'll be hoping for some revenge on that grand final. But which is a player that you're currently keen on or fading?
Yeah, let's go to fading for this. And we had a discussion about this only last night, but Josh Dunkley, although the Swans midfield is missing Errol Goulden, Mills, who we'll presume will run through there at points of the season. So we're a little undermanned at the moment. The midfield's extremely strong and still very defensive, and they're still going to nullify a lot of fantasy points that players will get in other matchups. So I'm still looking at Sydney as one of the really strong midfield matchups and a sort of a bit of an avoid, irrespective of some of the outs that we have. So Dunkley, on a day like this, I'm going to be fading him. And again, it's really tough because he's so good. And I think he was definitely in the top 10, maybe in the top 8 of all midfielders from last year. And with so many injuries, it seems a bit like a no-brainer. But I'm going to look at the matchup. I'm going to look at some of the numbers from last year and just know that I do think someone like Dunkley, who sort of won't push as far forward as some other midfielders who maybe have more upside against the Swans, is just going to have a bit of an average game. And that doesn't mean he's going to play bad. I just don't think he's going to be in your sort of top 6 scoring midfielders for round 1. Hence why I'm going to be fading him.
Yeah. No, good call. He was one that I considered as well. I think like a James Jordan goes to a Lockie Neal and quiets him down, I think. That probably means that Will Ashcroft and a Josh Dunkley probably get a bit more of the ball around, but is enough in a tough matchup.
Even Rowbottom, he's so good as well.
Exactly. So that's why I don't currently have him in my squad either, but he's definitely someone that's been in the mix with the amount of injuries that we've got. Player from this game I'll probably chat about is Dane Zorko. So I just think with the lack of defenders, I think we've probably got to put him in. Obviously, there's a flag that Will Hayward did go to a James Sicily last week and kept him quiet. Obviously, in the grand final, Zorko had a great game. So do they just automatically put a Will Hayward to him straight away? I'm not sure. I'm still putting him in my squad regardless, but there is a slight chance that this score is a little bit lower than what we expect just because of the tougher matchup here. But he will get some kick-ins, so I think his floor is high enough. Just obviously the flag that there might be some attention thrown his way as well. What do we got here? So Brandon Doe's got this question here. Thoughts on Libba with no Bont? This has been one that I've been looking at, and we're actually going to be chatting about this game next as well. But before we do, what were your thoughts on Tom Liberatore with no Bont and no Treloar as well?
I think it's a great pot option. It's so good. I feel like history has shown that when Libba gets more of an opportunity to be that midfielder, then he scores and he always seems to deliver. So it's a consideration that I've actually made. Currently, I don't have, but, maybe I fade Sam Walsh, like I was talking about later. Maybe I get a little bit hesitant and I sub in someone like Libba is definitely a front runner for one of the mids you should be starting for this round, because the beauty about GameDay Squad is you can sub in and out as many players as you want in each given round. So you don't have to commit to Libba over a period of time. You can put him in for this one round, reap the benefits, and then move on from him later on. So, yeah, he's going to be their main midfielder. It's in against North, who is a good matchup for mids. It's not amazing, but it's still good. And I think he's going to score really well.
Yeah, I like the play as well. Definitely is a pod option. I don't think many people are going to be going a Libba. because we obviously talked about if people just use the stats center, Libba's not going to be as high as some of these other mids going to be down. So you have to scroll a little bit to find him. And he could have a big game with that market share being right up in round one. So I like the pod play. Someone I definitely looked at putting into my squad. Not currently there, but someone that I have been considering. We will move on to that Bulldogs and Melbourne games. Who's a player that you're keen on or fading from this game?
Yeah, well, I'm going to talk about the most informed player at the tail end of 2024. His name is Tristan Cherry. Now, he didn't end up finishing as one of the top, but what's this? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The sixth best player overall in GameDay Squad. And if you just took the second half of the season, I can guarantee he was number one. He was unbelievable to finish his 2024 campaign. He truly proved that he can be the dominant ruck at North. He's finally just come into form. And not only is he good at just being a ruck with hitouts and everything, he tackles hard, he gets his boot on the ball, he kicks. He just does a little bit of everything. And that's exactly what you're looking for. Tristan Cherry is the type of guy that could be the number one scoring player in all of fantasy in a given week. And even against one of my favorite players, old Tingles, Timmy English. If anyone knows me, you know how much I love Big Tim. But he's going to be in for a day against Tristan Cherry. It's going to be a tough battle, and Cherry's going to score well. So I would almost start there with your rucks. And if you want to go pods or do anything else, by all means. But Cherry is a must start for me, especially with Marshall coming off a bit of an injury and not having exactly the preseason we wanted. Cherry's the number one player.
Yep, fully agree with that. The player I'm also keen on from this game, I don't have one for my starter team, unfortunately. I've got a silver to put in my classic and my challenger squads, but Riley Sanders is someone that I'm pretty keen on in the forward line. So he's one of the ones that's a very rare bronze on Game Day Squad. A lot of people asking for on the transfer market because he's not one of the most pulled players in the bronze packs and starter squads, right? So I just think we talk about it with Libba, but no Bont, no Treloar. Sanders is going to be one of those sort of top 2 or 3 midfielders in there. He's available as a forward on Game Day Squad as well, which is fantastic. So I just think when the forwards are probably not going to score like huge amounts of points compared to the other positions, I think that Riley Sanders is a guy that can put up, especially early in the season, some good scores and get your Game Day Squad off to a good start. So for me, he's someone that I'm pretty keen to play. As I said, got him in a couple of my squads, but not my starter team, unfortunately. That's this will
be one of my favorite games this round because it's just such a good fantasy game. There's so many good players. So I'm just going to be watching it, just loving it all. Don't sleep on Caleb Daniel.
Yes, another one. Yep.
He's going to be insane to get in your squad. So if you got one, I'd be starting him as well. There's plenty of options, though. Trust me, you could play 6 players from this game easy.
Yeah,
they could all be in their top 6.
Yep. Exactly. No, very, very good call. We'll move on to the other Saturday night game, which is Collingwood and Port Adelaide. So this is another good game. A lot of fantasy relevant players here. Who's a player that you're keen on or fading from this game?
I am keen on Harry Perryman for the Collingwood Magpies. He's a defender in our game. So one thing you want to look for, and like Caleb Daniel that I just mentioned, is a really big advantage that players can have are ones that are playing out of position, but in the game, they're acting as a different position. So Riley Sanders is a perfect example of that, Bales. You're talking about getting him into your squad. The reason is because the position he's currently in, it's fantastic. This is the same for Perryman. He's a defender. Defenders are a little tough to pick this round, in my opinion. There's a lot of great options, don't get me wrong, but there are a lot of 50-50 calls you're going to have to make between particular matchups and players. But Perryman has really good upside for me. Look, he probably didn't have the best game. And I actually don't have a bronze Perryman card to get in. But I'm just letting everyone know that if you have a Perryman, you've got to get him in. This is one of those games that he's going to play really well. What did he have last week? Had 103 fantasy points, so not the best, but I do see him doing better. Like they got touched up last week against the Giants, and with a little bit more control in the midfield, and Butters not being there, I think he's going to have a better week this round, or better round, and in your squads for sure.
Yeah. I think that Collingwood want to bounce back at the G as well. I think they'll be looking for a strong showing in this game here. Player that I'm keen on starting in my squad is Connor Rozee. So obviously the only slight flag is that the toe injury, ankle injury, whatever it was at training, was it last week? But he said he's fine. He's not in the injury report, and I don't think Port will make that same mistake again that they did last year, where they said he's fine. He plays. He gets subbed out early. They're not going to do it with the captain. Not round one. So if he's fine,
sure?
he's well. I hope so, and I'm talking myself into it. But it's a good matchup against Collingwood anyway. We know Collingwood's a good matchup for mids. We saw what a Finn Callahan did last week as well. Josh Kelly also went really big there. So for me, Connor Rozee's been in great form. He obviously had a huge score against St Kilda in the preseason. I'm expecting him to start off well, and if Port are going to go over to Melbourne and beat Collingwood at the G, I think Connor Rozee's going to have to be one of those players that scores really well, particularly as the captain. So for me, I'm really keen on him. The other player I'm actually interested to watch, I might not play him this game, is a Dan Houston. So obviously revenge game. Obviously we hear about it with like NBA and NFL fantasy and everything like that we talk about revenge game when they come up against the team, they go big. Could we see that from Dan Houston this week back at the G? For his first game at the G in Collingwood colours against his former team, Port Adelaide. So someone to watch. He's definitely someone I've been toying with putting in, but at the moment he's not currently in my squad. Moving to the Sunday games, and we are going to move on to my Crowies. The Crows taking on the Saints. I'm fingers crossed.
New look Crows, by the way.
Hopefully they get off to a good start. I have a feeling I know who you're going to talk about. Who's a player that you're keen on from or not keen on from this game?
Yeah, you know who I'm going to talk about, but I'm going to shout out, and you might touch on him, but Jack McRae. I think he's in for a huge round as a forward in GameDay Squad. If you've got a card, get him in. But I want to talk about who I think could finish this round as the highest scoring player out of all. His name is Jordan Dawson. You know you love Big Dorsey. You know I'm a fan of Big Dawson. And I was saying that if there were some of the biggest winners in preseason, out of all of them, Dawson might have been at the top. He just looked like he was in the best of form in any trial game. Anytime he was on the field and they were getting footage of it, he was just unstoppable and unbelievable. Presumably, he's going to be playing in that full-time mid role. Of course, always the big concern with Dawson is he's so good that it almost hurts him because he can play forward, he can play defense, he can literally play anywhere on the ground. But if we see him playing mid for the entire game against the Saints, I think he's going to go nuts. He's a great tackler. He can push forward. He can kick goals. He just has such big upside, and he can just dominate a game in every aspect. So big Jordy Dawson. I'm loving what I'm seeing from him. And, yeah, he's in my squad for this round.
Yeah, exactly.
I know we're doing a reveal later, but I'm just so high on him, I have to say it.
Yeah, exactly. Well, people know that I could make the rest of this podcast just about how keen I am on Jordan Dawson this year. I don't think that role's going to be as fluctuating as what some people may think. I think he's still at least a 60% CBA guy. He's still going to be in there a ton. And there will be games where he's in there 75, 80% of the time when the Crows need him in there to win the game or whatever. Because at the end of the day, he's the captain. Yep. He's the best. Him or Rankin are a best player. You could argue that Rankin's more of like the impactful player, but I still think Dawson's probably the best player on the Crows. So I just think he's going to go big. And the Saints round one, I think he's in for a good showing.
Anyone in the chat, I need their response here. Surely Rankin's nowhere near the level of Dawson. Or am I just wearing my eye patch and it's my love for Dawson?
I still think that over. I think that obviously I know David King's obviously high on Rankin. I still think Rankin could be a top 5 to 10 player in the comp at some point, whether he does reach that height or not. I think Dawson's a solid sort of top 25-ish player. I think he's a better player in terms of his all-round game, but I feel like Rankin is arguably the most impactful. So I think
thank you.
I think it's still close. I think it's still close. I'm going to go Dawson still top, but I think it's a bit closer, especially if Rankin has the year that we're thinking of, and he's another player in this game that I'll be keeping a close eye on. And
look, Bales, we love you, but I just can't agree with that. I think it's levels. It's levels to it, man. And Rankin's not even on the same universe as Jordan Dawson. But I'll digress.
I'm not going to argue because they're both Crows players. So if anyone's talking about Crows players, I'm all for it. So
yeah, you're right. You're right.
Yeah, exactly. Two players I'm actually fading here. So actually, and I'll say three. Actually, 3 players from St Kilda that I'm fading this week that normally are locked into our squads every week. Rowan Marshall, Jack Sinclair, and Nasai Wanganeen Miller are all fades for me in Game Day Squad this week. So
wow.
People are going to be wondering, how can you be fading 3 of those big names and 2 defenders when we're looking for defender options? So I start Marshall, pelvis injury. Obviously, we don't know if Harry Boyd's going to, obviously tomorrow night we'll find out if Harry Boyd's name with him. But if he is, that means he's going to be splitting some ruck time. If Harry Boyd's not there, it could be a chance of he's a bit more of a pod. I think there are 2 clear better ruckmen this round to put into your game day squad. But I just think with limited preseason, I'm not trusting it to start with. If he shows something good in rounds 1 and 2, all of a sudden in game day squad, I'm looking more at putting Ron Marshall back in because we know how good he is. He was the top scoring game day squad player from last year. So he's someone I'll be looking at. The other 2 players, obviously defenders, Jack Sinclair and Nasai Wanganeen Miller. Jack Sinclair, again, limited preseason hamstring injury. I'm not putting him into my squad this week, along with Nasai Wanganeen Miller. And the reason that I'm more not putting those 2 in is Adelaide are a tough matchup for defenders, particularly at the Adelaide Oval. They're already one of the top 4 or 5 teams in terms of restricting defender scoring, but especially Adelaide Oval, they're very, very hard. So they're red on the scale. They're whatever. They're not good matchups. So I'm fading them. I think there are better options this week with better matchups. So yeah, I'm fading all 3 of those players. I know we said we'll stick to 1 player each from each of us, but I just thought I'd flag those 3 that I'm not as keen on. Moving over to Melbourne and GWS, their second last game here. Another game at the G. Who are you keen on or fading from this game, Tom?
Yeah. A lot of great options in this game. There's going to be a lot of decisions that are made and some players from this game, like Tom Green, for example. Is he going to be healthy, ready to play? And if he is, I
think he's going to be named. I think he's going to be named. Whether you play him in your squad in round 1, obviously, is another question, but I think he's going to be named tomorrow night.
Likewise, and I don't think it's something I'm going to jump at, I'll be honest with you. I'll probably be a little bit more hesitant, but someone I will jump at is Lockie Ash. He's been so good pre-season and also in season. He's almost looks like he's taking over the Lockie Whitfield role. And I'm a little concerned about Lockie Whitfield long term because I feel like he's getting more attention, as he should, though. He's just such a good player. But they almost have realized that they have another Whitfield in Lockie Ash. He's so good. They're trying to feed him the ball a lot, and they're making a point to make sure they're getting it to Ash because he can cut through the defense and get a long entry into the forward line. And that really suits someone like Hogan, who can play contested, and even Cadman sort of developing into that as well. So I think from a play style point of view, Ash is exactly what they need, and Whitfield does that exceptionally as well. And also just from an opportunity standpoint against Melbourne, who are known to kick and be very subpar in front of goals. One of their big issues is they can't finish goals and they kick a ton of behinds. And he might not get the kick-ins like Whitfield, but he's almost going to be that second or third person that gets the ball after. So there's going to be a lot of +7s sort of in that range and within that part of the field. And, I'm not a believer in overreacting to round 1 performances. But I think with Ash, he's in.
The question I have for you for Lockie Ash, in Game Day Squad, he scored 114 of those points in the second half. Is that a worry for you with such? And again, other formats, a Lockie Ash is different conversation. I mean, in Game Day Squad, obviously, we can put the best players in for each week. Is that a worry for you that so many of those points came in the second half when a lot of Collingwood players were cramping? There was a lot of chip mark. Is that a worry for you, or are you still confident that you think this Lockie Ash, breakout has been sort of around for a few years? We've been thinking he's going to break out, but it could be maybe this the year. Is that what you're thinking, or are you worried maybe potentially about that scoring split?
Yeah, good question. Look, last year I had him as my 12th ranked defender out of all defenders in the competition. So he's always been in and around that mark for me. Just hasn't taken the next step. But I really feel like he's taken that next step in his career and along his journey, that he's just a lot more confident as a player. You can tell he's playing with a different sort of speed, a different type of energy. I guess it is a concern but in the same instance, they could do the same thing here. I see the Giants potentially winning this game and maybe slowing it down and changing their play style again to do a bit of damage control and get the win. So I could see it happening again by all means. And it's almost reassuring to know he can score that many points that quickly.
Yeah, exactly. My play that I'm really keen on for this game. So if we were doing a lock of the week, I think Tom would have had Jordan Dawson based on saying he's going to be number 1 scorer this week. My lock of the week is the big Melbourne ruckman, big Maxi Gawn.
Big
I think
Maxi,
I think Max. I think I think Max Gawn could be the number one scoring player this week. I hope it's Jordan Dawson, but I think it could be Max Gawn. Great matchup here against GWS. And normally you're thinking Giants, it's okay. He's fine. Briggs won't be there, unfortunately. Suffering a concussion and a neck injury as well. I think he'll be okay post his bye. But this week, we're looking at in GameDay Squad, again, you're targeting matchups. And a matchup against a Lockie Kiefer and Nick Madden at the G, first game for Melbourne in the season. This could be a mammoth score. And he'd be a guy that there's obviously captains in AFL Fantasy and Supercoach and Dream Team and Bolter and all the other formats out there. But GameDay Squad, obviously, there's no captains. But the way that you can have a captain, quote unquote, is put more salary on them in the classic, challenger, and champion, where you can put a silver, gold, platinum, diamond, or if a legend, if you've somehow got a legend of a player, put them on. If you've got if you're in classic and you want to put some extra salary on a Max Gawn and can put a silver, gold, or platinum or something like that, he'd be one of the couple players this week that I'll be really happy to put a fair bit of salary on, because I think he'll be good and he would be my lock of the week for a big score. Moving on to the final game of the round, which is West Coast and Gold Coast, the two coasts going head-to-head. Tom, who is a player that you're keen on or fading from this game?
Yes, mate. Let me give you some reassurance for your midfield. Noah Anderson is a player you've got to get in your squad if possible. West Coast are going to be one of the best matchups for midfielders this season. It was last year, and there have been some changes in terms of personnel, but I don't think that's going to change a whole lot when we look at the whole and the bigger picture. I think the Suns are going to be red hot this year. They're looking to have their best season in the competition yet, and I think they're going to try to go make a statement over on the West Coast this weekend. And it's going to start from their commander-in-chief, who I think is their best player, is Noah Anderson. So I think he's going to come into this game, he's going to dominate, and he's going to score a really solid mark. And, yeah, couldn't give you more advice. Get Noah Anderson in.
Yeah, exactly. A few people might be worried about the splits between home games and away games. I just think Anderson being the captain this year, again, Gold Coast will look to take that next step this year. I just think Anderson, I think his floor will rise as a result of being the captain and that added responsibility, which means, okay, he may not score the 130s, 140s, 150s that he does when he's at home, but in a good matchup like this, I think he could still put up a pretty big score as well. And when a few options are injured in our midfield, I think he's a very, very good option to put into your squad. A player that obviously I know that you unfortunately put into your squad, obviously there just for note, and a few people might also as well as Sam Flanders. He's obviously not going to be playing this week. He's ruled out with back injury, so he should be back post their round 2 bye. But someone, if you've got in your squad, to put out of your team there, a guy that I'm keen-ish on at the moment. He's currently in my starter squad. Is Liam Baker. He's been the guy that if I had a Sanders, he wouldn't be there. But the fact that I don't have a Sanders, and I don't think a lot of people got a Sanders in their starter teams either, I think Liam Baker, for me, is probably the next best guy. So Gold Coast are a great matchup for defenders. We saw what Matt Roberts did in the preseason. I think that Liam Baker can definitely get involved with a lot of the touches. And I think that he can hopefully takes a kick out or two, right? McGovern took all of them in the preseason game. Hopefully Baker can get a couple. If not, hopefully he'll be the guy that they chip to. He's not going to be as high as your Horn Francis or your Dylan Moores or your Bailey Smiths or a Caleb Daniels or anyone like that. I think he's just going to be a solid forward, and you pretty much know what you're going to get. So that's why I've put him into my starter squad this week. Because I think besides Anderson and Baker, I don't know if there's a great deal of other relevant players for our GameDay squad this week. I think this is probably one of the more quiet games. So I thought it was good to talk about Liam Baker, and he's also currently in my side. But besides those two, I think that's probably all the players from that game there. So that wraps up the game preview. So we'll chuck our teams up and show you guys what teams that we're rocking with. So we'll go with Tom's team first. So that's on the screen there for you guys. As Tom said, you can pick your squad. So if for people that obviously play all the other formats, the difference with this is you've got 7 scoring defenders, obviously 6 on field, 1 on the bench. You've got 6 midfielders with 5 on field. You have the 2 rucks with 1 of them on field, and then you've got 6 of the forwards and 7 forwards and 1 on the bench. But as Tom said, those 4 players on the bench all score points for you. There's no they don't score half points or anything like that. They score full points. It's as if they're on field. it's like a full sort of 22 players that play in an AFL team. That's how Game Day Squad works. So, Tom, do you want to talk us through your squad?
Yeah, for sure. Of course, minus Flanders, as you mentioned, it's going to be out. So no more null scores for me this season.
Do you know who you'd be putting in? Would you be putting in there instead of him?
Yeah, I don't actually know because we spoke about Sicily before. I agree. I don't think it's Sicily. Maybe it's Houston with a revenge game, as you spoke about. But gosh, he burned me last. I guess I burned me last week, but he burned me last week. Do I get him straight back in? Maybe he makes up for my mistakes.
Maybe just a week too early.
The Saints defenders, they're not as great options this week. Like, it's actually going to be a really tough decision. A name that comes to mind, and it's going to be a left fielder, but Dan Rioli could be a really good replacement with Flanders being out. I see him maybe elevating his game and sort of stepping into what Flanders was doing last season. But we'll see. I'm probably a little bit more confident with Houston over Rioli, but I have no idea, and I'm going to need to sit down and work that out when lineups come out tomorrow. Even Short, maybe that's a good shout. I know that's the first player we touched on this episode. But pretty standard backline, I think, other than the likes of Lockie, Ash, and Nick Martin. Someone I'm going to take a punt on. A little worried about his role, how much time he's going to spend forward, is he going to play much in the midfield, etc. But I think he's still good enough to warrant getting him in my starter squad. My midfield, I'm loving, as I mentioned, Walsh, maybe someone I might fade, but for now, he's going to start for me. Noah Anderson, big ups on him, and then just the sort of standard. After that, I'm going Marshall at this point, but it is something to consider doing Maxi Gawn. I'm sort of hearing you out, and maybe I make a decision on that a little later on. But that's what I have in. And forwards, I'm really liking my forward combination. Ideally, if I had a Sanders or a Daniels from GWS, I'd probably replace Toby Green. But other than that, sort of those forwards I have in there, I'm pretty set on. Myers and Smith as well, the double Geelong pairing. I don't think you should be afraid of that at all, and doubling up with players and teams and positions that if they're good enough to play, they're good enough to play. So I wouldn't be too worried about sort of trying to pick other forwards based on that, and maybe even Jezza if you want to go Jezza as well. But for me, I think Myers and Smith will be the better forwards from those sort of three this round.
Yep. Don't mind it, mate. Don't mind it at all. We'll chuck my squad on the screen there. So a couple of little differences there as well. So as I mentioned, Jaiden Short, I'm pretty keen on. He's one of the differences, and Jaiden Short as well. Jaiden Short twice. Tom Stewart is the other one I'm pretty keen on as well. There, obviously, I've just gone the Andrew Brayshaw over Caleb Sarong, but I could easily see both players going pretty big. So that's a consideration. I might put both in, but I'm pretty keen on them as well. And you mentioned with Sam Walsh as well. I'm still considering maybe if I go a Chera, do I go a different midfielder on the bench there? Libba is someone I've also looked at as well for the 1 week play. So yeah, definitely something I'm looking at. Obviously got Gawn instead of Marshall there in the rucks, and then the forward line. I've got Isaac Rankin and Liam Baker as the two differences there. Isaac Rankin, I was actually shocked you didn't have Isaac Rankin in your squad. I thought you may have him in there, but I'm pretty keen on him. I think he'll go quite well playing a bit of extra midfield time and should score pretty well there. But yeah, I think the forward line in every format, but I think as well with Game Day Squad, I think it's going to be fairly vanilla most of the year, pretty much like a Dylan Moore, Horn, Francis, Rankin, McRae, Smith, Daniel, Sanders, Baker. Might be like a Brent Daniels or Brian Myers or a couple of others, but it's not going to be that much.
When he comes back, sort of see him coming into squads. But I agree, it's going to be pretty much a lot of the same players you're seeing week in and week out.
Yeah, exactly right. So that's how our two squads are looking there. My classic side, which is the one I probably take the most serious, is the exact same team. It's just a few different rarities and stuff rolling around in the squad as well. So that'll do us for the first live show of the season with Tom. So Tom, mate, thanks very much for jumping on with us, mate. Where can the people find you across the socials, and anything else from Game Day Squad you wanted to plug on here as well?
Yeah, for sure. Make sure to go follow Game Day Squad socials. They're putting out a ton of content, helping you with your squads and whatnot. So just at Game Day Squad for that. X, Facebook, Instagram, however you like to roll. We do have a Discord server as well. So if that does interest you, please join. We do a ton of giveaways. It's the best place to get in touch with other coaches in our community. And I know a lot of people asked about trading before. We have trade-specific chats where you can go in there, you can ask for players or sort of put players out there that you're wanting to trade away, and people will come to you with offers, and you can literally be like a coach and talk to them person to person and then make a deal out of that. So I think it's one of the best parts of our game. So go there and join if you haven't already. And you can find me at TommyGDS on X, which I'll be doing a show tomorrow night, GameDay Squad orientated, with some guests. And it's going to be sort of my classic team reveal after the lineups have come out. So it might look a little different depending on some of the news for some players. But yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, beautiful, mate. Thanks for jumping on. You can find me at BAILSDT across the socials and find us at AFL Fantasy Fans on Twitter as well. As I said, if you guys haven't signed up to GameDay Squad yet, make sure you guys go and do that and use my code BAILSDT at sign up, and you get 3 free packs to sign up, valued at $21. 3 of the 9-player common packs. That's 27 players extra on top of the starter packs you get when you sign up. So that's probably, I should have mentioned, that's where you get 27 free players. And they're silver rarities and up. So the ones that you don't get in the starter packs, that can help build out your classic side. And yeah, make sure you guys go and get amongst that as well. So yeah, we'll be back tomorrow for our AFL, for our captain's video for AFL Fantasy, and then our live show on Friday answering all your AFL Fantasy questions. So if the ones you didn't get answered today, we'll answer there. But this will show is always focusing on GameDay Squad. So we'll see you back next week. Hopefully you guys have a good round 1 in GameDay Squad. Hopefully you get some good rewards. And we'll catch you guys next week for our round 1 review / round 2 preview. So thanks, everyone. Catch you next week. See ya.